And we have a special guest today.
Yeah, Carol Liebau, who's the president of the Yankee Institute for Public Policy up in Hartford, a wonderful think tank that really takes a good look, I think, at some of the spending mishaps that have been going on for the past quarter century here in Connecticut. At least, Carol, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. Great to be with you all.
Now, first, Carol, can you just give folks an overview of what the Yankee Institute does and what you guys focus on?
Sure. At the Yankee Institute, we're dedicated to advancing policies that promote smart, limited government, fairness for taxpayers, and an open road to opportunity for all the people in our state. We just believe that everyone in Connecticut should be free to succeed, however they define success.
And Connecticut Can Work is a new policy that you guys have been rolling out. And from what I've seen, it's kind of about cutting out some of the red tape for businesses, moving things forward. Tell us a little bit about it.
Right. You know, Connecticut Can Work is our effort to help advance some policies that are going to allow people to find jobs, help job creators create those jobs, and really help our state economy grow. You know, we all know that we have a lot of economic challenges here in Connecticut. And the question is, how do we solve them? Even the governor has admitted that taxing has, as he put it, come a cropper. And so the question is, what are we going to do? And the only real answer to solve a lot of these challenges is to have economic growth. That's what's going to restore our state. That's what's going to help our people prosper, going to make business vibrant again. So Connecticut Can Work is an initiative devoted to proposing some common sense reforms that won't cost the government anything, but are going to help people get ahead, which is exactly what we've had too little of in the last recent years.
What are some of the ways that we can turn the state around? I mean, this is a generation, I think, has been used to a lack of economic growth here in Connecticut, right?
You are so right. You know, it's interesting, job growth in Connecticut has been among the slowest in the nation. We're 41st in job growth. And young people between the ages of 25 and 34, when you should really be able to get that foot on the ladder of opportunity, we have the second highest unemployment in the whole country, 7.8% unemployment among that group. And, you know, we took that and we looked at what people looking for jobs were saying, job creators. You know, something like 79% of Connecticut's job creators have said that all the red tape, all the regulations, the mandates makes it more difficult to grow their business, and that too often the regulations are vague and they're unclear and it costs time and money. And that's why probably Connecticut's gotten an F from small business people across the country when it comes to business friendliness. So Connecticut Can Work is an effort to sort of encapsulate what needs to happen for our businesses in 3 words: open, grow, and succeed. And the open, what we need to do is reform and streamline occupational licensing laws. We have just an incredible abundance of laws that sort of hold people back. You know, solopreneurs, people who could go out and make a living and make a life for themselves. And yet, even in Connecticut, 54 low-wage jobs, it requires something like an average of $173 and over 200 days of training just to go and get a license to do this. That ought to change. We need to review all the requirements for professional licensing. Make sure that they're actually protecting the public rather than just creating barriers to entry for a profession. And we ought to look at extending the opportunity wage, which is entry-level pay for young people, a little bit below the minimum wage for people under 21, that would indeed help them get their foot on the ladder of opportunity and give job creators an incentive to hire them and help them and develop them into people who will be able to go on and prosper. That's sort of the open part.
Right. And I think the grow, I'm just looking at the grow part of the policy, which I find very interesting, because one of the first parts that you guys talk about is embracing a sharing economy and technological innovation by encouraging some non-traditional businesses. And these are things that we've been talking about before: Tesla, Airbnb. You kind of mentioned those. Can you talk about that a little bit and some of the ways that they aren't always so welcome in the Connecticut economy?
Sure. You know, even things like Uber. And you look, and a lot of the entrenched interests They want to protect their market. They want to keep competition out.
Right.
And we understand that, I mean, of course, but you know, the way to succeed isn't by keeping out competitors, it's by outperforming them. And in the meantime, it holds costs down for consumers and everyone's better off. And so we think we ought to be encouraging competition and we ought to be encouraging that sort of thing rather than trying to hold it back. We ought to be increasing access to technical education for people whose interests and talents run in that direction. You know, you can lead a very happy, fulfilled, and prosperous life, you know, even if you don't speak ancient Greek. If you have a skill that you care about and that you're good at and that you can use to make a life for yourself and a family. And then doing things like in the GROW component, reducing the wait time for permits. It isn't right to put out this whole obstacle course of permits that businesses need and then slow walk the process of handing them out. So that's GROW.
Right. So, and before we get to succeed, and, I mean, all this makes sense, but it seems like this state is so bases its budgeting on these permit processes, on the regulations, and the extra charges for businesses. I mean, we end up hitting a deficit almost every single year because the forecasts are so high for whether it's the conveyance tax or other fees that businesses and individuals are charged. How do we turn that around?
Well, you know, I think we need to look at whether we're being penny wise and pound foolish. Because to the extent that these regulations persuade job creators to go to other states,
Right.
or force us to do what the legislature just did with Sikorsky and hand over $220 million in taxpayer money simply to incentivize them to stay. Wouldn't it be fairer and better to go ahead and to streamline the process and make it easier to be able to collect some reasonable taxes from a wide variety of flourishing businesses rather than trying to nickel and dime the ever diminishing number of businesses that remain in the state. And you know, we've seen that over time. That's why we find our state in economic problems. That's why something like 64% of Connecticut's people say that it's hard to find a job in their community, and why 7,000 more people are looking for jobs in Connecticut this year than just were last year, because businesses realize we can't deal with the hassle. We can't deal with the nickel and diming. We can't deal with systemic obstruction from a state government that should instead be encouraging us to do what we need to do.
Let's get, so how do we succeed? So we did open, we did grow, and
Right.
let's succeed, Carol.
Well, you know, succeed for one thing is to be able to increase the pace of hiring, make it easier for job creators to hire by reforming unemployment insurance and workers' compensation. Right now, we have heard so many stories from small business people who are really afraid to hire because of the costs that come along with it through an old system that really we need to take a look at. And that's an important part. We need to eliminate punitive fines from things like OSHA for, you know, for example, a first violation where there's no threat to public health or public safety, and offer businesses the opportunity to comply with some of the suggestions that the agencies make initially without being penalized. And, you know, we would like to see having the first $10,000 of personal property from property owned by businesses exempted from taxes. All of those are common sense, very low cost ways to send the message to our job creators that we want you to be in Connecticut. We want to partner with you, not obstruct you, and help you succeed.
So has there been any response yet to this proposal that you've heard out of Hartford?
No, we have not heard any response yet from Hartford, but of course, you know, our goal is to start this conversation and make sure that these ideas are out there and that people of any party or of none who care to discuss these ideas and advocate for these ideas can do it when the legislature comes in, whether, you know, in a special session or in January. You know, they're ready to deal with this.
And as you mentioned before, it was pretty shocking. You shared some graphs with us to kind of see how far down the list, like job growth in Connecticut, just kind of scrolling down. There it is right there. It is kind of jarring to see that,
Where's
even though,
Connecticut?
you know, where are we even?
Which one is this?
Yeah, there you go.
There we
you
are.
go.
The job growth.
Job growth through
Since
2015.
1990, right?
Right.
Right. And then, as you mentioned, younger workers. Josh, you're no longer in this. I know it breaks your heart, but 25 to 34.
Yeah, right.
Keep scrolling down.
Because we're right there at
It
the
is
bottom
right.
again.
Kate, I'm
See?
happy that you have a job.
Yeah, thank heavens for
too.
Alabama, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Keeping us from last place. Wow.
But you know, we can do better. And we've got so many bright, energetic people in the state who want to work.
So a few years ago, the Malloy administration did the First Five
Right.
program, and which was now that benefited companies like ESPN also, right?
Right.
And then other new companies, or was that was not the one that brought in companies out of state? That was
Well, you know, here's the thing, right,
Right.
about First Five and all of these sorts of things. We don't believe that government should be picking winners and losers. We don't believe that job creation or your ability to have a business or to get taxpayer money to boost your business, you know, that shouldn't be happening. And it certainly shouldn't depend on being one of the lucky few who are selected or connected or protected in some way. And in our view, the better course and the fairer course for everyone, big business, small business alike, is for the state to stop trying to subsidize business creation and instead just start fostering entrepreneurial growth. That's the way to encourage everyone and to make it fair for anyone with the initiative and the drive and the talent to have a
Which
business.
is something that we really see with a lot of the southern states and companies starting down there, because a number of them don't have the income tax or
Right.
other taxes that we see up here. And it's not picking and choosing which companies don't to pay the taxes. It's everyone has a level playing field.
Exactly.
And you know, if you want to live in an ugly state like Texas, it might be worth it because your taxes are less.
Well, exactly. I mean,
Texas is an ugly state. That's a fact. Kate.
There's some nice parts.
Yeah,
Jeez.
there's some nice parts of you.
We have a lot of viewers in tech. No, I'm just kidding.
not anymore.
Not anymore.
But at any rate, yeah, I mean, and that's the whole point, is level the playing field, give everyone the opportunity, and let a million flowers bloom. And that's the way Connecticut can start growing its way out of a lot of the fiscal challenges we're encountering.
So what is your reaction when last week you see Governor Malloy kind of doing a victory lap of sorts about saving Sikorsky and keeping it here? I mean, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, any job that is saved is, of course, a wonderful thing. And we embrace all job creators here in Connecticut. But the fact, again, is that wouldn't it be simpler and fairer rather than having to go to, you know, big companies where we've heard of all kinds of companies. I'm sure you read about the auto parts company and, you know, that have to leave the state. They weren't big enough to matter enough to get a special deal. And the Zordans wrote about it, the owners of the company. They had been part of the fabric of their community for years and years and years. And now they're leaving for South Carolina because they couldn't get a special deal like Sikorsky got. Let's make it fair for everyone. As you say, let's level the playing field.
But so how do you get this message across to the people who are in charge up in Hartford? Because it's, you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is that the Democrats run Connecticut, and a lot of them who are in charge in Hartford are entrenched in the way that we've been doing things for an entire generation now. Right? I mean, those numbers, you look at how we've had the least amount of job growth and innovation since 1990. Well, the income tax came into effect in 1991.
Right.
So, you know, you got to think that that's tied to this, and there's no way in the world that I could imagine Hartford repealing the income tax.
Well, you know, that's where folks like you and your viewers come in. Because in the end, the Yankee Institute is of course nonpartisan. But the people who are up there making these decisions work for you.
Right.
And you have the power to decide if you like what they're doing, and you have the power to help change what they're doing. And that's what we count on when we do this. I mean, obviously, some people in our operation talk to legislators, but ultimately, the people who have the power are the people who have a ballot.
Yeah.
And I know people can get a lot of information at this at connecticutcanwork.org.
Yes.
Right?
In Connecticut, all spelled out.
All spelled out, connecticutcanwork.org. Carol, thank you so much for joining us.